Are you looking to fine-tune? Whether for your business, your job, your team, or yourself. In each episode, we will be discussing different ideas and opinions using real-world examples to help you see opportunities, innovate, and succeed. Hi, it's Corby Fine, and welcome to Fine Tune. So welcome back. I've taken a few months off of my podcast for a whole bunch of reasons. And one of them was really to think about what I wanted the new format to be. And I think you'll see as I start off with new guests and new conversations, we're going to focus a little bit more on quick hits and things that you can actually do to change the trajectory of your business, of your life. Little things that everyone can take away and learn from. And my first guest today, I happened to meet over the summer. We had a great conversation. We were talking about marketing and transformation and agility. And something really struck in what he said to me that said he has to be the first person that I get back on my podcast when I relaunch in the fall. Michael Roberts is with me today. He is the Chief Marketing Officer of MetLife, a member of the company's executive leadership team. He's leading global brand and marketing for the organization, really focused on designing value-driven solutions to help MetLife build ultimately, amazing and remarkable and enduring customer relationships. It's a big role. It's a big task. Prior to MetLife, Michael was with the Vanguard Group as the CMO for the Retail Investor Group. He's also been with Bank of America Merchant Services, an amazing career. Michael, welcome to the podcast today.
Corby, thanks so much. I look back really fondly on our conversation from this summer and so happy to be able to be here to continue.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And you're, I believe, in New York today, which is where you're based out of. I'm in Toronto, so we've got a nice international conversation going too. Why don't you just describe briefly so everyone understands your mandate? What are you doing at MetLife and maybe a little bit about MetLife for those that aren't totally familiar with the organization?
Yeah, happy to, Corby. So as you mentioned, I'm the Global Chief Marketing Officer for MetLife. MetLife is a $70+ billion diversified insurance company that has operations in about 40 markets. It serves in the U.S. 96 of the Fortune 100 and 85% of the Fortune 500, providing group insurance benefits. We're the largest life insurer in Latin America. We serve over 20 million customers in Asia with a big presence in Japan. So we're a global life insurer with a diversified product set and businesses that make up, kind of an amazing portfolio of opportunities to, as we say, live our purpose, which is helping our customers have a more confident future.
Yeah, it's a great purpose. And I think organizations ultimately, and it's proving out in the metrics and the financial results that actually live their purpose are seeing the downstream benefits of that. There's an interview question that I ask a lot of people when I'm interviewing. So anyone who's listening who's ever going to apply for a job, just on my team anyway, take note of this. I often ask people, there's something in your current job or maybe your previous one that you don't think is right. You don't think something's operating right. You don't think there's a meeting cadence, a process. And really the question I ask people as the kicker is, so what did you do about it? And it's not so much that you solve every problem, but that you're willing to take the chance to try and raise the issue and find better ways to do things. So as we talk about making changes that can lead to better outcomes, can you think back in your career about a particular situation where you said to yourself, there's just something not working, it's not going right, it's a product, it's a process, it's something with the structure. And what did you do to try and make it better ultimately for everyone involved?
Yeah, so it's such a, first of all, Corby, that's a great question. I think everybody should really think about how they would answer that question and what are the five, kind of examples, because that pattern of how to think about improvement, I think, is a really, really kind of important self-examination. It reveals kind of a lot about, how we process information and the mental models we use in order to drive, kind of the results that we're trying to drive, both in life and in business. I'm going to go back to a situation I had where I was running an organization, and I'm going to I'm going to be purposefully vague in some of the specifics of the innocence and in some of it. Where I saw kind of an organization that had an amazing amount of talent in it, but was just positioned and was operating in a way that, where the people in the organization, the talented people in the organization, weren't happy. The partners of that organization were not happy, and nothing was really working kind of the right way. It was just a situation where, and this is it was an interesting observation. Kind of this was reasonably early in my marketing career, where I couldn't find a pattern of things not working, which then tells me that it's completely out of control. When you can find a pattern of things not working, then you can start to follow the pattern and understand kind of maybe the root causes and those things. But what I saw was that there was no pattern, and it was problem after problem after problem within this organization. It was a digital organization. So I realized that I needed to kind of change the whole organization structurally. And so what I did was I started kind of at the top and moving really, really quickly to find new leadership and mix new leadership in with the old leadership. And so we had this interesting process of designing a couple jobs, and then we kind of interviewed some people. We found people that we thought we liked, and then we put them in a room together to solve problems together to see if they could work. And then I hired essentially a block of people at the same time in order to replace the leadership. And then that team eliminated 100% of the jobs in the organization and had everybody reapply for new jobs in a new organization. And while traumatic, for a moment, what we found at the end of that process is that the entire system changed, and the talented people in the organization found better, more appropriate places to add value. The processes were able to be looked at from a fresh perspective. And in the end, we had much more engaged group that was delivering outcomes for the business in a way that they weren't able to before. And so this was a situation where we had to kind of change everything at once, but there was very little loss of resources and jobs in that whole situation. And we found that people were a lot happier at the end. It's almost like we had, hockey players playing lacrosse and basketball players playing tennis. And so once we got everybody into the right sport, doing the right thing, it was a lot better outcome.
See, that's how I know you're a true marketer, because I'm a Canadian and you started with hockey. That's very talented of you. Thank you. I love it when Americans talk hockey. Let me a quick follow up on that. You mentioned mixing the new leadership with the old leadership. So when you think about hiring and talent acquisition, how important is it for you to think about knowledge and expertise in the vertical or technical area versus capability and capacity with fresh or maybe distinct and different backgrounds? How do you mix that?
Yeah. So, in general, this is maybe a little bit of my bias. I find that, the organization that I'm in or the group that I'm leading tends to have the majority of what is needed in order to be successful. And so what I do is I look at what we have that is working, maybe even what we have that's not working, and kind of evaluate how to improve that, and then look at what needs to be marginally improved. And it generally needs to be marginally improved. Organizations have cycles and lives of their own, and in most places that I've been, there's never been, or in all the places I've been, there's never been ill intent in terms of the team of staffing or what people are trying to do. It's really more been about opportunity. So, I diagnose where the strengths are, and then go find, kind of the marginal changes that are needed in order to be successful. And I'll go back to the example I used before. I didn't say I need a whole new team. I said, let's go figure out how to make this team more successful. And of course, we added a few people here and there. But overall, what I found is that most organizations have what they need to be successful with just a little bit of marginal change.
So that's a perfect segue into my next question, which, often things are actually pretty good. They're working well, you're hitting your goals, your targets, your objectives. But if you actually believe that everything can always be made or done better, just as a general philosophy, and, I always use the iPod story of the first iPod you held in your hand. It was 1.5 pounds of metal and plastic with a gray screen, and it held 1,024 songs, and it was the best thing you ever had. But could you imagine holding that today? And it doesn't mean that what was good then was actually not good. It was great for the moment at the time. But engineers and innovators and executives kept saying, you know what? How do we just constantly refine and make it that much better for the future? And to this day, we're still seeing that improvement. And so if you operate your business that way, it means, as a mentality, you're going to try and tweak and, to your point, adjust things or find those marginal changes. So maybe, do you ever find yourself in a situation where you're like, wow, the team, the executives, the board, everybody's happy, but I still want to try something different. I think there's room for improvement. And how do you identify those areas that...
For most executives, and for most people in general, that we go to where the problem is, and we try to fix things. That's kind of our nature as we've come up in life and in business, as I've observed, me and others that I know. I'll tell you, my perspective on this question kind of was informed by, a great...
You're not going to get a ton of pushback and pressure. It's like, are you nuts? What are you talking about? There's too much risk versus the potential of, but look how much more engaged we can make our team. Look at the customer experience we can improve and maybe make better financial gains. Is there a situation where you took the chance and said, I'm going to try and make something better that on the surface actually looks like it's humming along great?
Yeah, it's a really interesting challenge, I think, for a great article that I read, probably more than 20 years ago, called "Nobody Ever Gets Credit for Fixing Problems That Never Happened," which is a great title by an article. Some of the ways to look at systems in order to drive improvement, and in some ways, it informed my perspective on how things are always to be continuously improved. There's always an investment in capabilities that's needed in order to improve, kind of actual performance, and whether there's a performance gap or not, improvement is something that can be constant and designed into a system. And so in some ways, I actually don't accept the idea that everything's going well. I kind of reject that premise. And one of the things, that's more recent in terms of management thinking and operating models is Agile. And Agile, kind of has built into it a continuous iteration on products or whatever the Agile process is being applied to. So, in some ways I feel like it's a great question, but it doesn't align to my mental model of how the world works. In some ways, I feel like everything can be improved, over a period of. I think there are some traps though, where we can look at improvements, or we can look at the wrong solutions in order to drive, improvement. And so, there are so many situations where we just kind of either take shortcuts or work harder, rather than spending the time in investment or reinvestment in capabilities or figuring out smarter ways to work. But I think that's the lesson for me has been understand the system, figure out the intervention, avoid the challenge of or the trap of working harder or taking shortcuts, and focus on reinvestment and working smarter overall. And that's something that I apply to just about everything that I touch or interact with in life and business. It's understanding the system and really figuring out how to reinvest in capabilities and to work smarter overall.
Yeah, it's great advice, and I just pulled up the article, and I'm gonna share it out with my network as well. Just note, caveat, it's really long, everybody. But if Michael says it's a good read, it's a good read. But I'm gonna share it out. I found a copy, and so I guess the some of that maybe takes me to my third and final in-depth question. You're in an industry insurance, not everybody really understands all of the intricacies and the complexities that go on in the insurance business. They see mascots. They see it's a good podcast I just listened to on why every insurance company has a mascot, which we should talk about in another conversation. But when you think about the trends, the technologies, the products, MetLife doesn't bring in someone like you to keep the status quo. And per your philosophy that you just expressed, you're always trying to find those simple and complex things to do better. So where is insurance going? What are those trends, whatever you can tell that isn't secret sauce of the business, that might enlighten us to think, hey, that might apply to my business too?
Yeah, I think a couple thoughts here, Corby. So one, I think insurance is going the way of a lot of the rest of financial services in terms of customer experience being, kind of a new, not new, but an emerging kind of priority for the industry. Insurance overall has lagged in terms of customer experience. And even the insurtechs that are creating great customer experiences haven't put the same sort of pressure on the customer experience that has happened in other parts of financial services and kind of other parts of the consumer economy overall. And so I think the consumer is going to be much more powerful and demanding in terms of the expectations in terms of customer experience for insurers overall. So I think that's one kind of important trend. Nothing new and nothing surprising for others. I do think that another trend, which has a bit of a broader implication for lots of different businesses beyond insurance, is that our environment is becoming more volatile, and individuals are having to manage risk kind of more proactively, their own risk as well as risk, for their families. And frankly, post-pandemic, protection has become more important to lots of people. And I think this idea of protection as, core versus ancillary, I think will become something that lots of businesses are going to have to contend with. And you see some businesses contending with it, in innovative ways. And it's the rise of embedded insurance in a lot of consumer businesses, where you can, insure a product as you're buying. It's been in the telco space for a good long time, but it's spreading more broadly across different ecosystems. You're seeing things, digital wellness and protection solutions that are being adopted significantly more, so as people see risks in the digital space, whether it's identity theft or other sorts of risks that they're facing from a social media perspective. And so I think protection is going to become more front and center, particularly as volatility increases, and we've already seen that kind of as a result of the pandemic. And then I think the third thing in insurance that is part of what we'll see in the future is, I think a lot more attention to generational differences in perspectives on what insurance can and should provide. Part of this, I think, is based on demographics. We're going to live longer and longer. And so the sorts of things that we think about for protection and retirement are going to be different, because retirement is going to look different. And so I think longevity is going to have a big impact on lots of industry and the needs of people, kind of in these longer lives. And I think that's going to be an important shift for the insurance business. But I think if your business is not thinking about what longevity means, then you're going to miss a gigantic demographic trend.
Yeah, the term embedded insurance hadn't really crossed my mind until you just said it, but I just signed up for a 122-kilometer bike ride from Vancouver to Whistler next September, and it has 2 kilometers of ascent, so it's like a big ride. And they offered me for $20.40 insurance on my deposit of a few $100s to do the ride, and it would cover certain other things tied to travel, et cetera. And, in the sense of a customer experience, coming back to your first point, I'd be crazy not to take that, thinking that it's 12 months ahead. I have no idea what my life situation is going to be. I don't even know if I'll be able to book a flight, get a hotel, find a box to ship my bike, rent a bike. There's so many factors of unknown. And you guys as an industry are so great at forecasting all of those different parameters of potential risk and change, and then offering it to me in a simple, high value, low cost offering that if everybody didn't take that was signing up, they'd be like insane. And so that whole notion of embedding it, the digitization of the experience, in the moment decisioning, and actually providing value really made me feel like, wow, like that's a great customer experience. I would absolutely recommend this race or this, an event to all of my network because there's like no risk. And I think if you can think about that in other areas, it's a great model.
It is. And because it's 12 months away and we have less confidence in what 12 months away looks like than we did, I think, pre-pandemic, it's something that is reflects the reality of the times that we're in. There's a need for that sort of protection.
Exactly. Well, listen, explaining it to me was great. I completely, see and understand through both our conversations and today's interview why MetLife wants someone like you running the helm of that future of marketing, the future of agility, the future of customer experience. Michael Roberts, the Chief Marketing Officer of MetLife, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, and thanks so much for all of your insights.
Thanks, Corby. It's great to speak with you.
And enjoy the hockey season this year. Take care.
Appreciate it. Take care, Corby.
You've been listening to Fine Tune. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can connect with me on Twitter @CFine, through LinkedIn @CorbyFine, or visit my website, corbyfine.com. Fine Tune is produced by me, Corby Fine. Thanks for listening.